I want you to imagine something with me for just a moment. Imagine walking down a street in New York City in 1925. Your pockets empty, your heart heavy with worry about money, about your future, about how you're going to pay next month's rent. And then you push open the door of a small meeting room, and there's a woman standing at the front, and she looks at you with these kind, knowing eyes, and she says something so simple, so strange, that it stops your racing thoughts completely. She says, "Your word is your wand." That's it. 3 words. And in that moment, something inside you shifts, like a door you didn't even know existed suddenly swinging open. That woman was me, Florence Scovel Shinn, and what I'm about to share with you is the exact method I taught to thousands of people who came to me desperate, broke, and hopeless, and who walked away transformed. This isn't theory. This isn't wishful thinking. This is the forgotten method that changed lives nearly a century ago, and it will change yours today if you let it. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Another promise, another technique, another person telling you that wealth and abundance are just around the corner if you do this one thing. But here's what I need you to understand from the very beginning. I'm not going to sell you magic. I'm going to show you a spiritual law, as real and dependable as gravity, that most people stumble through life never knowing exists. And the reason it's been forgotten isn't because it stopped working. It's because we stopped believing that something so simple could be so powerful. You see, I spent years as an artist and illustrator before I ever spoke a word about metaphysics or prosperity. I understood beauty, composition, and how small changes in light could transform an entire painting. And what I discovered, through my own struggles and breakthroughs, is that life works the same way. Your words, your thoughts, your beliefs are the brushstrokes that create the masterpiece or the mess of your existence. And most people, bless them, are painting blindfolded, wondering why everything looks so dark. Let me take you back to where this all began for me, because my story isn't one of ease and privilege. I wasn't born knowing these secrets. I had to find them in the rubble of my own disappointments. I was married once, you know. My husband was an artist too, and when he died, I was left alone, having to support myself in a world that didn't make space for women to do much of anything except depend on men. I was angry. I was scared. And I was broke. Not the romantic kind of broke where you laugh about eating crackers for dinner, the kind where you lie awake at 3 in the morning wondering if you'll end up on the street. But in that darkness, I found something. I started studying the Bible, not as religion, but as a textbook of mental and spiritual laws. I read the mystics, the metaphysicians, the ancient wisdom teachers. And I began to see a pattern, a formula, a method that was hidden in plain sight. It was this. The words you speak with conviction become the blueprint for your reality. Not sometimes, always. The universe is set up like a mirror, reflecting back to you exactly what you project into it. And I started experimenting with this idea on myself first, because I had nothing left to lose. I would stand in my tiny room and speak out loud, with all the feeling I could muster, statements that seemed absurd given my circumstances. I give thanks for my immediate, endless supply of money. Can you imagine? I had maybe a few dollars to my name, and I'm declaring abundance as if it's already mine. But something extraordinary happened. Opportunities appeared. People came into my life. Money showed up in ways I could never have orchestrated, and I realized I had stumbled onto something profound, something that needed to be shared. So I started teaching. Small groups at first, just a handful of people in a living room, but word spread fast because people were getting results. Real, tangible, impossible to deny results. A woman came to me once, a widow with children, about to be evicted. We worked together for 3 weeks using this method. 3 weeks later, she inherited money from a relative she'd lost touch with years ago. Coincidence? Maybe. But I saw this happen hundreds of times, in hundreds of different ways, with hundreds of different people. The thing is, what I'm teaching isn't about manipulating reality or forcing the universe to give you what you want. It's about aligning yourself with laws that already exist, laws that are working whether you're aware of them or not. Right now, in this very moment, you are using these laws. The question is, are you using them to create what you want or what you fear? Because most people are master manifestors of their worries, expert creators of their anxieties. They speak their limitations into existence every single day and then wonder why life feels so hard. I'm going to walk you through this method step by step, exactly as I taught it in 1925, exactly as it works today. And I need you to come into this with an open mind, but also with a willingness to be uncomfortable, because some of what I'm going to say will challenge everything you've been taught about how life works. You've been conditioned to believe that circumstances control you, that you're a victim of luck or fate or other people's choices. And I'm here to tell you that's a lie. You are not a victim. You are a creator. And it's time you started creating on purpose. Before we go deeper, I want you to make a decision right now. Are you willing to see yourself differently? Are you willing to consider that maybe, just maybe, the life you're living isn't the only life available to you? Because if you can't answer yes to that question, nothing I say will help you. This method requires you to step outside the prison of your current thinking. It requires you to become a little bit crazy by the world's standards. But every single person who has ever done something extraordinary, who has ever created wealth from nothing, who has ever transformed their life completely, has had to be willing to look foolish first. So here we are, you and me, about to embark on a journey that could change everything. I'm going to share with you the actual technique, the stories of real people who used it, and the specific practices you can start today. Not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect. Today. Because the method works immediately if you work it correctly. And by the end of our time together, you won't just understand this intellectually. You'll feel it in your bones. You'll know, with a certainty that can't be shaken, that you have the power to reshape your entire financial reality. But first, let me tell you what this method is not, because there's so much confusion out there about manifestation and the law of attraction and all these concepts that have been watered down and commercialized. This is not about sitting on your couch, visualizing money and waiting for checks to fall from the sky. It's not about positive thinking as some kind of band-aid you slap on your wounds while ignoring the infection underneath. And it's definitely not about pretending everything is fine when it's not. This is deeper than that. This is about recognizing the creative power of consciousness itself and learning to use it with precision, faith, and intelligence. When I say your word is your wand, I mean that literally. In the beginning was the word, right? That's not just a nice phrase from scripture. It's a statement of universal law. Sound, vibration, intention, these are the building blocks of form. Everything you see around you was once invisible. It was a thought, an idea, a spoken word before it became solid. Your chair, your phone, the building you're in, all of it was consciousness first. And your bank account, your income, your financial situation, these are also consciousness made visible. They are the outward expression of your inner conversation. So if you want to change your money situation, you can't just change your actions. You have to change your word. You have to change the story you're telling about yourself and your relationship to abundance. And this is where most people stumble because they don't realize they're telling a story at all. They think they're just describing reality. I'm broke. I can't afford it. Money doesn't come easy to me. They think these are facts, but they're actually creative statements. They're wands waving, spells casting, building tomorrow's reality out of today's words. I had a student once, a man who came to me absolutely convinced he was cursed. Everything he touched turned to failure, he said. Every business venture collapsed. Every opportunity slipped through his fingers. And I listened to him talk for about 10 minutes, and then I stopped him and said, "Do you hear what you're doing? You're describing yourself as cursed, as a failure, as someone who can't succeed, and then you're shocked when that's what you experience." He was furious with me at first. He thought I was being cruel, dismissing his legitimate struggles. But I wasn't dismissing them. I was showing him who was creating them. We worked together for months. It wasn't easy. He had to become vigilant about every word that came out of his mouth. He had to catch himself in the act of speaking defeat and consciously replace it with statements of victory. And slowly, incrementally, things began to shift. It wasn't dramatic at first. A small opportunity, a chance meeting, a new idea. But he stayed consistent with his new word, his new story. And within a year, he had built a successful business that supported his family, and then some. The curse was broken, not because I waved a magic wand, but because he stopped waving the wand of negative speech. This is what I need you to understand viscerally, not just intellectually. You are doing this to yourself. Whatever financial situation you're in right now, you have participated in creating it through your habitual thoughts, words, and beliefs. Now, I can hear some of you bristling at that. Florence, I didn't choose to lose my job. I didn't choose for the economy to collapse. I didn't choose to get sick and rack up medical bills. And you're right. You didn't choose the external events. But you did choose, mostly unconsciously, your response to those events. You chose the meaning you gave them. You chose the story you told about what they meant for your future. And those choices, those words, those stories, they are creating your next chapter. This isn't about blame. Please hear me on that. This is about power. If you created this unconsciously, that means you can create something different consciously. If your word has been working against you, your word can work for you. That's not blame. That's the most hopeful thing I could possibly tell you, because it means you're not helpless. You're not at the mercy of circumstances. You are the operant power in your own life. Let me give you the foundation of this entire method in one principle, and then we'll build on it. Here it is. The universe is always saying yes to you. Always. It doesn't argue. It doesn't judge. It doesn't decide whether you deserve what you're asking for. It simply reflects, responds, and creates based on what you are being. And what you are being is determined by what you are declaring, believing, and expecting. Not just with your lips, but with your entire consciousness. When you say, I never have enough, the universe says, yes, you're right. When you say, money is hard to come from by, the universe says, yes, you're right. When you say, I am richly supplied, the universe says, yes, you're right. It's neutral. It's a law, like the law that says water flows downhill. Water doesn't care why you dug the channel where you dug it, it just flows. And the law of mind, the law of creation, through word and belief, it doesn't care whether you're using it consciously or unconsciously, it just responds. So the method, in its simplest form, is this. You must make a definite statement of what you want, as if it is already true. You must feel the reality of it. And you must persist in that statement and feeling, regardless of what your current circumstances look like. That's it. That's the method that changed thousands of lives. But oh, the depth and nuance within those simple steps, that's what we're going to explore. You have to make a definite statement. Not, I hope I have money. Not, I wish things were better. Not, maybe someday I'll be comfortable. A definite statement. I am now receiving abundant supply. Every need is met instantly. Money flows to me easily and constantly. These are definite. They are clear. They are claims staked in the invisible world, and the visible world must conform to match them. But here's where people get tripped up. They make the statement once, half-heartedly, and when nothing changes in the next 5 minutes, they give up and go back to their old story. The power isn't in saying it once. The power is in making it your new habitual word. It's in repetition, with feeling, until the statement becomes more real to you than your current circumstances. You have to impregnate your consciousness with this new idea, this new truth, until it gestates and births itself as form. I remember teaching this to a young woman who was desperately seeking employment during a particularly difficult economic time. She came to me with fear, written all across her face, clutching a newspaper full of rejection. I asked her to put down that paper, that record of lack, and to begin speaking a new word over her life. The divine plan of my life now takes shape in definite, concrete experiences leading to my heart's desire, I told her to affirm. She looked at me skeptically. But Mrs. Shinn, she protested, I have no job. I have no prospects. How can I say these words when they feel like lies? This is where most people stumble, you see. They want the feeling to come first, then they'll speak the word. But it works in reverse. You speak the word, you persist in speaking it, and the feeling follows. The feeling is actually the evidence that the word is taking root in your consciousness. I had her repeat this statement morning and night, before every interview, whenever fear would creep in. Within 3 weeks, an opportunity appeared that was so perfectly suited to her talents. It was as if the position had been created specifically for her. And it had been created in the invisible first, through the persistent words spoken in faith. You must understand, affirmations are not about deceiving yourself. They're about aligning yourself with a higher truth that already exists in the realm of the possible. When you say, I am prospered, I am divinely guided, I am surrounded by love, you're not lying. You're declaring what is true in the spiritual realm and calling it forth into the material. The word you speak today is building your tomorrow. Every statement is a stone laid in the foundation of your future experience. Are you building a temple or a prison? The choice is always yours. Now, the third transformative practice is what I call acting the part. This goes hand in hand with speaking your word, but it involves your body, your behavior, your daily choices. You must begin to act as if the thing you desire is already yours, not from a place of pretense or arrogance, but from genuine inner knowing. When you act from faith, your entire energy field shifts. You move through the world differently. You make decisions differently. You speak, walk, and carry yourself as someone who already possesses what they've asked for. I once knew a woman who desired to marry, but she lived her life as if love would never come. Her apartment was cluttered with her own things, no space for another. She spoke often of loneliness. Her schedule was rigid, her routines closed off to possibility. I said to her, "You are living the consciousness of lack. If you truly believed your partner was on the way, you would prepare room for them." She took this to heart. She cleared space in her closet. She set her table for two, even when dining alone. She began to say, "When my husband arrives, not if." Within 6 months, she met the man she would marry. Was it the physical space that drew him in? No, it was the shift in her consciousness. She stopped blocking love with her doubt. This is what acting from the invisible means. You align your physical reality with your spiritual knowing. If you're claiming prosperity, you don't hoard and pinch every penny from fear. You give generously where guided. You dress well. You care for what you have. You handle money with respect, not anxiety. If you're claiming health, you don't speak of your body as a burden or an enemy. You treat it with reverence. You nourish it. You move it with joy. You thank it for its strength and its healing capacity. Your actions are prayers made visible. Every choice you make is either a vote for faith or a vote for fear. The universe responds not to your words alone, but to the totality of your vibration, and your actions reveal what you truly believe. Now, here's where many stumble. They begin to act from faith, and then nothing appears to change immediately. Doubt creeps in. "See, I tried. It didn't work." And they return to old patterns, old fears. But faith is not a one-time act. It is a sustained state of being. You must persist in your knowing, even when the external world has not yet caught up. I have watched doubt creep into the minds of those who began with such conviction. They declare their good with authority. They feel the thrill of spiritual alignment, and then, 3 days later, when the check has not arrived or the phone has not rung, they begin to waver. "Maybe I was fooling myself," they whisper. "Maybe this doesn't work for me." And with that whisper, they sever the invisible thread that was even then weaving their demonstration into form. You see, the universe is always saying yes. It is always responding, but it responds to your dominant vibration, not your occasional hope. If you affirm abundance on Sunday and return to fear on Monday, you have given fear the final word. And fear, dear one, is a powerful creator. It simply creates more of what you do not want. This is why I tell my students, guard your thoughts as you would guard a treasure. Your mind is the gateway through which all good must pass. If you leave that gate unattended, anything may enter: doubt, worry, the opinions of others, the evidence of the material world. The material world is always the last to know. It lags behind your spiritual work, like a shadow lags behind the body. When you turn, the shadow does not turn instantly, it follows. So too does your outer world follow your inner convictions. But you must give it time to catch up. I once knew a woman who needed to sell her home quickly. She had already moved to another city and could not afford to maintain 2 residences. Month after month, the house sat empty. Friends told her to lower the price. Real estate agents shook their heads. The market was slow, they said. No one was buying. But she held fast to her spiritual knowing. Every day she blessed that house. She gave thanks that the right buyer was already on their way. She refused to entertain conversations about lack or limitation. She smiled and said simply, "It is sold in the invisible. I am only waiting for the visible to reflect this truth." And one morning, without warning, a buyer appeared, someone who had been searching for exactly that house in exactly that neighborhood. They paid her asking price without negotiation. When she told me the news, she said, "I almost gave up so many times, but something in me knew that my faith was the only thing holding the door open for my good." And isn't that the secret we so often miss? Faith isn't passive. It isn't sitting back with folded hands, hoping something good might fall from the sky. Faith is active. It's the energy that holds the door open when every circumstance around you is screaming for you to slam it shut. I want you to feel this deeply. Your faith is the bridge between your present reality and your answered prayer. And you must walk that bridge with certainty, even when you can't see the other side. Now, let me share something that changed my entire understanding of how this works. Years ago, I was working with a woman who desperately wanted to heal a relationship with her sister. They hadn't spoken in 5 years. The wound was deep. Pride had built a wall between them, and everyone in her family had convinced her it was hopeless. She came to me, exhausted from carrying the weight of it. I told her, "You cannot hold the pain and the possibility at the same time. You must choose." She looked at me with tears streaming down her face and said, "But what if I let go and nothing changes?" I said, "Then you will have freed yourself anyway. But more importantly, the moment you release the grievance, you create space for the miracle." She began to practice something simple but powerful. Every single day, she would speak out loud, "I give thanks for the complete and perfect reconciliation between my sister and me. Love has dissolved all misunderstanding. We are reunited in peace and joy." At first, she said the words felt hollow, almost foolish, but she persisted. And here's what happened. Within 3 weeks, she received a letter from her sister. It was brief, tentative, but it was an opening. Within 2 months, they were talking regularly. Within 6 months, the relationship was restored even more beautifully than before. When she asked me how I knew it would work, I told her the truth. I didn't know, but I knew that the universe responds to vibrational alignment. Her words weren't magic spells. They were tuning forks. They brought her into harmony with the reality she desired, and that harmony magnetized the outcome. This is not fantasy. This is spiritual law. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, "Florence, this sounds beautiful, but my situation is different. My problem is times real asterisk. I have bills that are overdue. I have relationships that are broken. I have a body that's in pain. And I say to you with all the love in my heart, your problem is not your problem. Your consciousness of the problem is your problem." Let me explain what I mean, because this is where most people stumble. They take an inventory of their conditions, and they say, "I must deal with reality." But what they call reality is simply yesterday's consciousness made manifest. They're looking at the harvest and declaring it permanent, not understanding that they are still planting seeds with every thought, every word, every mental image they hold. I remember a woman who came to me drowning in debt. She showed me statements, bills, notices evidence, she called it. "Look," she said, "this is real. These numbers don't lie." And I told her, those numbers are not truth. They are facts. And facts can be changed by truth. "What's the difference?" she asked me, bewildered. "A fact," I said, "is temporal. A fact is what has already manifested from previous thinking. Truth is eternal. The truth is that God is your infinite supply, that the universe is abundant, and that lack is impossible in divine mind. When you align with truth, the facts rearrange themselves." She looked at me as though I'd spoken in another language. So I gave her this treatment to speak daily. I am one with infinite abundance. Every door opens before me. My supply is inexhaustible, immediate, and comes from God. But how will the money come? She wanted to know. And there it was, the fatal question. The how. The method. The pathway that the human mind insists on controlling. I said to her, "What I say to you now, the times how times is none of your business. Your business is the times what asterisk. Your business is to claim it, to accept it in consciousness, to see it as already done. The how is God's job. The universe has infinite ways to bring your good to you, but when you insist on seeing the path before you walk it, you block 1,000 channels you cannot even perceive. Now, let me show you how this works in the practical world. I knew a woman, call her Margaret, who had been praying for prosperity for years. She wanted money. Yes, but more than that, she wanted freedom. Freedom from the crushing anxiety that woke her at 3 a.m. Freedom from checking her bank account with dread in her stomach. She would affirm, "I am prosperous, I am abundant." But in the same breath, she'd calculate how many days until rent was due and panic would flood through her body. One day, I said to her, "Margaret, you're trying to build the house yourself. You're standing there with invisible bricks, mixing invisible mortar, trying to figure out how God should answer your prayer. You're exhausting yourself with work that isn't yours to do." She looked at me as though I'd spoken in another language. "Your only job," I told her, "is to remain faithful to the vision, to give thanks that it is already done, to act as though you are the woman who has that freedom now." What would she do? How would she carry herself? Would she be frantic and grasping, or would she be calm, knowing her supply is infinite? It took some time, but Margaret began to practice this. When the fearful thoughts came, and they did come, like clockwork, she would stop herself. She wouldn't try to figure out where the money would come from. Instead, she'd simply say, "It is done. My God and I are one, and my supply is unlimited." Then she'd go about her day as a woman of means. Not spending recklessly, mind you, but spending without that clenched fist around her wallet. Giving where she was called to give. Breathing freely. 3 weeks later, a cousin she hadn't spoken to in a decade contacted her out of the blue. There was an inheritance Margaret had never known, about a small trust her grandmother had left years ago that had been sitting unclaimed because of a clerical error. The amount? Almost to the penny, what Margaret needed to pay off her debts and have 6 months of living expenses in reserve. Now, I can already hear the skeptic. Coincidence. But you see, there is no such thing as coincidence in a universe governed by law. Margaret changed her consciousness, and her outer world rearranged itself to match. The channel through which her good came was utterly unexpected. Had she been busy trying to manipulate circumstances, forcing this door or that door, she would have missed it entirely. She would have been looking east while her good came from the west. This is the mystical law of supply. You cannot see the channel before it appears. You can only see it after the invisible has been made visible. Your reasoning mind, that clever little calculator, cannot possibly figure out how your good will come. It hasn't the capacity. It's like asking a flashlight to illuminate the sun. I knew a man who needed a large sum of money for a business venture. He could see no possible way it could come. Every avenue seemed blocked. Every door appeared closed. He went to his relatives, nothing. He approached banks, rejected. He asked friends, they had nothing to give. His reasoning mind said, "It's impossible. Give up this foolish dream." But he had learned the law. Instead of collapsing into despair, instead of forcing and pushing and manipulating, he made his statement. "Infinite Spirit, open the way for the immediate supply of all that I need. Give me a definite lead. Let me know just what to do." Then, he let go. He released it completely. He went about his days in peace, trusting, knowing that the answer was already on its way. Within 1 week, a man he had not seen in 15 years walked into his office. This man had been thinking about him, had felt an urge to look him up, had been impressed to reconnect. In the course of their conversation, the business venture was mentioned. The old acquaintance immediately became interested and supplied the entire sum needed. You see? The channel was utterly unexpected. Had this man been sitting by his telephone, anxiously trying to think of every person he had ever known, running through mental lists, forcing his memory to produce names, he might never have thought of this old friend. Their connection had been slight, the years too many. His reasoning mind would have skipped right over that possibility as too remote, too unlikely. But infinite intelligence wastes nothing. It knows every connection, every thread, every possibility that exists in the vast web of life. It sees what you cannot see. It knows what you do not know. This is why Jesus said, "Take no thought for your life." Not because your life doesn't matter, but because anxious thought blocks the very good you seek. The moment you begin to worry, you have stepped out of faith and into fear. And fear is simply faith in the wrong thing. It is belief in lack, in limitation, in the power of circumstances to harm you. But I tell you, circumstances have no power except the power you give them through your belief. I knew a woman who was waiting for a position. She needed work desperately, and every day she would say, "I wonder if I'll hear today. I hope something comes through soon." Her mind was filled with anxious speculation. Nothing came. Then one day she said, "I place this in God's hands. The right position is mine by divine right, and it cannot be kept from me." She let go. She released the burden. Within 3 days, she received not one offer, but 2, and both were better than anything she had imagined. This is the law. When you release, you receive. When you trust, the universe can move on your behalf. But when you clutch and grasp and worry, you create a wall between yourself and your good. Now, someone might say, "But what am I supposed to do? Just sit back and do nothing?" No. There is a vast difference between anxious striving and inspired action. Anxious striving comes from fear. It is exhausting, chaotic, frantic. Inspired action comes from faith. It is calm, clear, purposeful. You will know which is which by how it feels in your body. When you are in alignment with divine will, action feels natural. It flows. You feel guided, supported, even energized. When you are forcing from fear, everything feels hard. You push, you struggle, you exhaust yourself, and still nothing moves. Learn to recognize the difference. Your body is wiser than your mind. It knows when you are in the flow and when you are swimming against the current. The universe is not asking you to figure everything out. It is asking you to trust, to take the next step that is clearly before you, and then the next, and then the next. One step at a time, lit by faith. And this is where many of us stumble. We want the entire staircase illuminated before we take the first step. We want guarantees. We want to see the whole map, every turn, every milestone marked and measured. But the universe doesn't work that way. Faith requires movement in the midst of mystery. I once knew a woman who had a vivid dream. In it, she was standing at the edge of a great chasm, and on the other side was everything she'd ever wanted. Her healed relationships, her creative work flourishing, a life of meaning and joy. But there was no bridge. She woke troubled, thinking the dream meant her desires were unreachable. Then one day, as she stood at her window in prayer, she felt a quiet instruction. Step forward. It made no logical sense. There was no bridge, no path, no visible way across. But something in her stirred, and she decided to trust. She took one action that felt aligned with her dream. She called her estranged sister. Just that. One phone call. And you know what happened? The moment she acted in faith, the next step appeared. Her sister answered. They talked. A crack of light entered years of darkness. Then another step became clear. And another. She told me later. The bridge didn't appear all at once. It built itself beneath my feet, one stone at a time, as I walked. This is how faith operates. It is not passive waiting. It is active trust. You take the step you can see, even when you cannot see the destination. You speak the word that is yours to speak. You extend the hand that is yours to extend. You forgive the person you've been guided to forgive. You make the call. You write the letter. You begin the thing that frightens you. And the universe rushes to meet you. Every single time. Not always in the way you expect, not always on your timeline, but it meets you. The path illuminates as you walk it. I've watched this pattern countless times. Someone declares their intention, truly declares it, with conviction, and then something shifts. A phone call comes. An opportunity surfaces. A person enters their life who knows exactly the person they need to meet. Coincidence? I don't believe in coincidence anymore. I believe in correspondence. The outer world corresponds to the inner word. Your declaration creates a vibrational signature. Think of it like tuning a radio dial. When you speak your word with faith, you tune yourself to the frequency where that thing already exists. And the universe, which is far more responsive than we've been taught, begins to broadcast on that frequency back to you. But here's what trips people up. They speak the word once, maybe twice, then spend the rest of their week contradicting it. They affirm abundance in the morning, then complain about bills all afternoon. They declare perfect health, then spend dinner discussing their symptoms in exhaustive detail. You can't plant a seed and dig it up every few hours to see if it's growing. Your word needs space to work. It needs the soil of your sustained faith, not blind faith, conscious faith. The kind that says, I've set this in motion, I've done my part, now I watch for the evidence. And the evidence comes in whispers before it comes in shouts. A random conversation that gives you a crucial piece of information. A book that falls off a shelf, yes, literally falls and opens to exactly the page you needed. An impulse to take a different route home. And on that route, you see the sign, the shop, the person who changes everything. These aren't accidents, they're answers. But you have to be awake to receive them. You have to be present. Most people are so busy forcing, pushing, manipulating their reality that they miss the gentle hand of the universe trying to guide them. They're screaming their demands so loudly they can't hear the whispered response. The spiritual life requires sensitivity. It requires that you develop what I call spiritual ears, the ability to hear beyond the noise, beyond the logical mind, beyond what seems reasonable. Because the path to your good is rarely reasonable. It's magical. And you know what I've noticed? The people who struggle the most with this work are the ones who trust only what they can see. They're trapped in what I call the prison of appearances. They look at their bank account and say, well, that's reality. They look at their health diagnosis and say, that's what's true. They look at their circumstances and build an entire belief system around what is, never once asking themselves what could be. But appearances are the least reliable thing in the universe. They're the end result of old thinking, old beliefs, old patterns. By the time something shows up in your physical reality, it's already ancient history in the realm of consciousness. It's yesterday's news, and yet people worship it. They give it all their attention, all their faith, all their emotional energy. They treat the visible world as if it's the only world that matters. This is exactly backwards. The invisible world, the world of thought, feeling, and faith, that's where everything begins. That's the realm of cause. The physical world is merely the realm of effect. When you understand this, you stop being a victim of circumstances. You stop saying, well, this is just how things are. You start saying, this is how things were, based on how I used to think. But I'm thinking differently now, and so everything must change. I remember a woman who came to me in absolute despair. Her husband had left her, her children were grown and distant, and she felt utterly alone. She kept saying, I'm not lovable. Nobody wants to be around me. That's just the truth. And I said, no, that's just what you've been affirming, and life has been kind enough to show you exactly what you believe. We began to change her inner conversation. Instead of rehearsing her loneliness, she started affirming, I am surrounded by love. I am a magnet for warm, wonderful relationships. My life is full of connection and joy. It felt like a lie at first. She'd say the words and immediately want to contradict them with evidence. But I told her, just keep speaking it, let the words do their work. Within 2 weeks, her friend called completely out of the blue and offered to invest in her idea. Not a loan, an investment. She didn't have to chase it down or prove herself worthy. The moment she stopped defending her lack, the abundance found her. This is what I mean when I say, your word is your wand. You're not trying to convince the universe. You're not bargaining with God. You're aligning yourself with what already exists in the spiritual realm, and your spoken word is the bridge that brings it into form. Now, I know some of you are thinking, but Florence, I've tried affirmations. I've said the words. Nothing happened. And I want to address that directly, because this is where most people stumble. There's a difference between parroting words and speaking with authority. When you say, I am prosperous, but your inner dialogue is screaming, who am I kidding? Look at my bank account. You're not affirming anything. You're just making noise. The power isn't in the repetition alone. It's in the alignment. It's in the moment when your conscious mind and your subconscious mind agree, even if it's just for a split second. That's the moment the universe moves. I worked with a man who wanted to heal a relationship with his estranged son. Years of silence between them. Every time he tried to reach out, pride and old wounds would rise up and sabotage the connection. So I gave him something simple to say. Divine love now dissolves every false belief between us. He didn't say it to his son. He said it to himself. Every morning, every night, sometimes 100 times a day when the old anger flared up. And here's what happened. Nothing. For weeks. But he kept speaking it. And then one ordinary Tuesday, his phone rang. His son. No explanation. Just, "Dad, I think we should talk." You see, the invisible work was happening the entire time. The words were clearing the path. They were dismantling the barriers brick by brick. The outer world simply reflected what had already shifted within. The outer world simply reflected what had already shifted within. You see, most people have this completely backwards. They wait for the evidence before they believe. They say, "Show me the money, then I'll believe I'm prosperous. Show me the relationship, then I'll believe I'm loved. Show me the healed body, then I'll believe in miracles." But that's not how the law works. That's not how the universe operates. The belief comes first. The inner conviction precedes the outer manifestation, always. I watched this woman continue her practice, day after day, week after week. And here's what happened. Not overnight, not in some flash of lightning, but gradually, steadily, the frozen channels began to thaw. First, a small check arrived in the mail. Unexpected, a refund she'd forgotten about. Not a fortune, but enough to buy groceries for the week without anxiety. Then a friend called out of the blue and offered her freelance work. Then another opportunity. Then another. Within 3 months, her income had doubled. Within 6 months, she was earning more than she ever had in her stable job. But here's the part that amazed her most. The money came through channels she never could have predicted. Not through the avenues she had been frantically knocking on. Not through the doors she had been trying to force open with her worried mind. The universe had its own routes, its own waterways, its own mysterious distribution system that was far more intelligent than anything her limited human perspective could have orchestrated. This is the great paradox, the great mystery. You must speak as if it is already done. You must claim your good before you see it. You must call those things that are not as though they were. This isn't delusion. This isn't denial of reality. This is a higher law, a spiritual law that supersedes what your physical eyes can see. Your word is the bridge between the invisible and the visible, between the world of cause and the world of effect. Every great thing that has ever manifested in this physical realm began first as an invisible idea, a thought, a conviction in someone's consciousness. The buildings, the inventions, the works of art, the healed bodies, the transformed lives, all of it existed first in the unseen before it could appear in the seen. And your word is the tool that solidifies the invisible pattern and draws it into form. You see, the word has never been separate from power. In the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. This isn't religious sentimentality, this is spiritual law, the very mechanics of how reality operates. Your word is not merely a sound that fades into the air. It is a vibrational force that imprints itself upon the substance of the universe. It carries intention, conviction, and creative energy. When you speak with faith, you are not hoping something will happen. You are commanding it into being. There is a world of difference between wishing and decreeing. Wishing is passive. It says, "I hope this works out somehow." But decreeing is active. It says, "This is done. It is already accomplished in the invisible, and now I call it forth into the visible." That is the difference between someone who drifts through life reacting to circumstances and someone who walks as a conscious creator. I once worked with a woman whose entire life had been a series of disappointments. Every venture she attempted seemed to collapse. Every relationship ended in betrayal. Every door she approached seemed to slam shut just as she reached for the handle. She came to me exhausted, convinced that the universe itself was against her. But as we spoke, I began to listen not just to her story, but to her words. Every sentence was laced with expectation of failure. Nothing ever works out for me. I always get hurt. People can't be trusted. I'm just unlucky. Do you see what she was doing? She was not describing her life, she was creating it. Her words were decrees, powerful affirmations spoken with absolute conviction, and the universe was simply obeying her commands. She was the author of her own suffering, though she had no idea she held the pen. I told her plainly, You must stop bearing witness against yourself. Your words are creating your world, and you've been speaking destruction over your own life. At first, she resisted. She wanted to tell me I didn't understand, that her circumstances really were impossible, that her past proved her words were true. But I asked her a simple question. How can your future ever be different if you continue to declare it will be the same? That question broke something open in her. She began, slowly at first, to change her speech. Instead of "nothing works out," she began to say, "divine order is now established in my life." Instead of "I always get hurt," she declared, "I am divinely protected and guided in all my relationships." She felt foolish at first, as though she were lying. But I reminded her, "You are not lying, you are prophesying." Within weeks, something began to shift. Not in her circumstances, not at first, but in her time's atmosphere *. She carried herself differently. Her voice, once tight with complaint, softened into certainty. And then the outer world began to mirror this inner transformation. An unexpected reconciliation. A financial gift. A door opened where there had been only wall. This is the creative power of the word. You are not merely describing your world, you are sculpting times it. Every statement you make is a chisel against the marble of possibility. You are either carving the statue of your dreams or hacking away at your own foundation. There is no neutral ground. Now, let us address a question that often arises. But what if I don't believe the words I'm saying? What if they feel false? This is the crossroads where most people turn back. They abandon their power because the words feel hollow in their mouths. Let me be plain with you. Your feelings are not the measure of truth. Your feelings are times effects *, not causes. They follow your habitual thoughts like shadows follow form. When you have spent years declaring defeat, your emotional body has learned to resonate at that frequency. Of course, new words feel strange. Of course, they feel like costumes that don't fit. But wear them anyway. Speak them anyway. Think of it this way. A seed planted in the ground does not feel like a tree. It feels like a seed in darkness, covered in soil. But if it could speak, it would not say, "I am buried and lost." It would say, if it knew its nature, "I am planted and growing." Your affirmations are not denials of present conditions. They are recognitions, times of invisible operations already underway. You are aligning your speech with the unseen reality, the divine blueprint, and calling it into manifestation. I once knew a man who came to me depleted, his business failing, creditors circling. He said, "I cannot lie to myself. I cannot pretend I'm prosperous when I'm nearly bankrupt." I told him, "You have been lying to yourself for years, lying that you are limited, lying that supply is scarce, lying that you are separate from infinite abundance. Now I am asking you to tell the truth, that God is your source, that divine ideas flow to you freely, that you are a channel for prosperity." He resisted but finally agreed. "Each morning and night," he declared, "infinite supply now manifests in my life. I am open and receptive to divine abundance." Within 3 months, a business opportunity came that not only saved him, but expanded him beyond what he had previously known. This principle, speaking into existence what you desire to see, is not wishful thinking. It is spiritual law. Your word is the most powerful tool you possess. It carries either the vibration of faith or the vibration of fear, and the universe responds accordingly. I worked with a young artist who complained that no one appreciated her work. Every conversation was filled with declarations of rejection. "Nobody understands my vision. Galleries won't give me a chance. The art world is closed to outsiders." I stopped her mid-sentence one afternoon and said, "Do you hear yourself? You are building prison walls with your own words." She looked startled, then tearful. Together, we crafted new declarations. My work resonates with those meant to receive it. Divine channels open for the expression of my gifts. I am seen, valued, and supported. Within weeks, she received an invitation to a group exhibition. Within 6 months, a collector purchased 3 of her pieces. The shift was not in her talent that had always been present. The shift was in the frequency of her words. You see, the spoken word is a decree. It sets forces into motion. When you declare lack, you summon more lack. When you declare abundance, doors swing open. This is why I am so passionate about monitoring your speech. Listen to yourself throughout the day. Catch yourself when you speak limitation. Immediately replace it with truth. If you say, "I'm always broke," stop and correct. Money flows to me easily and constantly. If you say, "I never get what I want," rephrase. Divinity always delivers what is rightfully mine. This is not denial of present conditions, it is refusal to perpetuate them through reinforcement. Remember, conditions are temporary. Truth is eternal. Your job is not to describe what you see with physical eyes, but to declare what you know with spiritual vision. The woman who says, "I am healed," while still experiencing symptoms is not lying, she is aligning with a higher reality that must, by law, manifest. This is why affirmations work, not because they deceive the subconscious, but because they alert the subconscious to what is already true in the realm of spirit. When you say, "Infinite Spirit, open the way for my right work, my right home, my right relationships," you are not begging an external deity. You are instructing the inner intelligence that governs your entire experience. I once knew a woman who had been married to a difficult man for many years. She came to me exhausted, bitter, resentful. She wanted a divorce but had no money and no means of supporting herself. I said to her, "Do not focus on leaving him. Focus on becoming the woman who naturally lives in peace." She looked at me as though I had suggested she grow wings. But she began to practice. Every morning she would say, "I give thanks that divine love now expresses perfectly through every person in my life." She stopped rehearsing her grievances. She stopped recounting his faults to friends. Within 3 months, her husband began to change. He softened. He became kinder. Within a year, their marriage had transformed completely. She said to me, "I don't know what happened. It's like he became a different person." I told her, "He did not change. Your vision of him changed, and the universe rearranged itself to match your inner picture." This is not manipulation. This is not control. This is alignment. When you see through the eyes of spirit, you activate the highest potential in everyone around you. You call forth the divine blueprint that exists beneath the human mask. Now, let us be very clear about something that confuses many students: the difference between mental force and spiritual power. Mental force is will, effort, strain. Spiritual power is relaxation, trust, knowing. Mental force says, "I must make this happen." Spiritual power says, "It is already done." When you operate from spiritual power, you stop pushing against closed doors. You stop forcing, manipulating, trying to control outcomes. You simply hold the vision and let the universe arrange the details. I once knew a woman who wanted to sell her house. She tried everything, lowered the price, hired different agents, staged it perfectly. Nothing worked. She was exhausted from the effort. Finally, she surrendered. She said, "Infinite intelligence, this house is in your hands. I know the right buyer is already on their way." Within a week, someone knocked on her door and made an offer above her original asking price. They weren't even working with an agent they'd been driving by and felt drawn to stop. That's spiritual power. It doesn't adventure, doesn't chase, doesn't beg, it simply knows. Now, here's something important. Spiritual power requires you to give up resentment. Resentment is one of the heaviest vibrations you can carry. It's like dragging an anchor while trying to sail. You cannot resent someone and manifest your good at the same time. It's spiritually impossible. Resentment says, "They did me wrong, and I won't let it go." Spiritual power says, "I release all judgments. I see the divine in every person." When you hold on to resentment, you're tied energetically to that person. You're giving them your power every single day. Forgiveness cuts the cord. It sets you free. I remember a student who couldn't get ahead financially. She worked hard, did affirmations, visualized abundance, but nothing changed. Then we discovered she was deeply resentful toward her father for how he'd handled money when she was a child. That resentment was a wall between her and prosperity. The moment she forgave him, truly forgave him from her heart, her finances shifted, new opportunities appeared. Old debts resolved themselves. She'd been blocking her own good. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning someone's behavior. It means releasing the emotional charge so you can be free. It means saying, I no longer give this situation power over my life. Spiritual power also requires faith in the unseen. You must believe before you see. That's the whole game. The physical world is always secondary. It's the effect, not the cause. When you look at your current circumstances and declare them permanent, you're giving all your power to the visible world. But when you look beyond what is and declare what will be, you're operating from spiritual law. You're creating from the invisible realm, where all things exist as potential. This is what it means to walk by faith, not by sight. Your consciousness is the womb where your future gestates. What you hold there, what you nurture with your attention, your words, your imagination, will eventually be born into your physical reality. This is why guarding your consciousness is the most important work you'll ever do. I once counseled a woman who was perpetually anxious about money. She would check her bank account multiple times a day, each time reinforcing the story of lack. She would say, "I'm just being realistic. I need to know where I stand." But what she was really doing was bowing down to circumstances, giving them authority over her future. I asked her a simple question. If you were truly prosperous, how would you feel right now? She closed her eyes and smiled. I would feel peaceful, grateful, free, I said. Then feel that now, not when the money comes now. Because the feeling is what magnetizes the manifestation. She resisted at first. It felt dishonest to feel abundant when her account showed otherwise. But gradually, she began to practice feeling prosperous throughout her day. She would wake up and say, "Thank you for my lavish abundance." She would pass a beautiful home and think, "I live in that consciousness." She stopped the obsessive checking and started the deliberate feeling. Within 3 months, an unexpected inheritance came through. A freelance opportunity appeared out of nowhere. Her salary was increased without her asking. She wrote to me saying, "It's as if the universe was just waiting for me to change my inner state." That's exactly what was happening. The universe doesn't respond to your words alone, it responds to your vibrational frequency. And your frequency is determined by what you consistently feel and believe. You can say affirmations all day long, but if underneath those words you're feeling doubt, fear, and lack, those deeper feelings will outpicture in your experience. This is why I always say, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Don't wait for evidence. Don't postpone your joy. Step into the emotional reality of your desire now, and watch how quickly the outer world rearranges itself to match your inner conviction. Your word, backed by faith and feeling, is the most powerful creative force available to you. When you speak, you're not just making noise, you're releasing spiritual substance into the ethers, setting into motion the law of manifestation. This is why I teach you to speak only good into your life. Stop predicting disaster. Stop rehearsing failure. Stop declaring lack and limitation over your finances, your health, your relationships. Every time you say, "I can't afford this," or "I never get what I want," or "nothing ever works out for me," you're using the law against yourself. You're instructing the universe to deliver more of exactly what you don't want. I've watched people talk themselves into poverty, into sickness, into loneliness, all because they didn't understand that their words were creative decrees. They thought they were just being realistic, just stating the facts. But the facts are only yesterday's manifestations. The facts are only what was created by your previous thoughts and words. You are not bound by the facts unless you continue to speak them into your future. Here's what you must grasp. Your imagination, coupled with your spoken word, is your divine authority. When you imagine something and then declare it with your voice, you've set two mighty forces into motion. The imagination creates the blueprint in the invisible realm, and the spoken word gives it momentum and direction in the physical realm. I knew a woman who was behind on every bill, creditors calling daily, barely able to feed her children. She came to me desperate, asking what she could possibly do. I told her to stop speaking her poverty and start speaking her prosperity. She looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. "But Florence," she said, "I am poor." "That's just the truth," I said. "Then you will stay poor until you change your truth." The universe doesn't care about your current bank balance. It only responds to your conscious conviction and your spoken word. She began, reluctantly at first, to declare, "My God is a God of abundance. Unexpected income comes to me now. I am supplied from unexpected sources." She said it morning and night, even when everything in her circumstances screamed otherwise. Within 3 weeks, a relative she hadn't heard from in years sent her a check. A week later, she received a refund she'd forgotten about. Then a job opportunity appeared that paid twice what she'd been earning. But here's what fascinated me most about her story. She told me that the money wasn't even the biggest miracle. The real transformation happened inside her. She said, "For the first time in my adult life, I stopped feeling like a victim. I stopped waiting for someone to rescue me. I realized I had the power all along." You see, when you truly grasp this law, you understand that you're never actually dependent on any person or circumstance. You're dependent on the infinite source that flows through all things. People are simply channels. Jobs are channels. Opportunities are channels. But the source itself is inexhaustible. I remember a man who came to me absolutely furious with his business partner. He was convinced this partner had blocked his success, stolen opportunities from him, sabotaged his reputation. He spent hours telling me about every wrong, every slight, every injustice. Finally, I stopped him. I said, "You're giving this man entirely too much power. You're making him your god. You're acting as if he controls your supply, your success, your future." But he doesn't. He can't. No person can block what's divinely yours unless you give them that power through your own belief. He looked at me as if I'd spoken in a foreign language. So I explained it this way. If you believe this man can hurt you, he will. Not because he has any real power over you, but because your belief creates that reality. You're using the law against yourself. I gave him a simple affirmation to work with. No person can interfere with God's plan for my life. My good flows to me from all directions, through countless channels. I also told him to bless his partner every time he thought of him, to wish him well, to release all resentment. He was resistant at first. He wanted justice, revenge, vindication, but eventually, he tried it. And within a month, everything shifted. His partner suddenly became cooperative. New clients appeared from unexpected sources. Contracts he thought were lost came through. But most importantly, he felt free. The weight of anger and victimhood lifted. He told me later, "It was like someone turned the lights back on in my life. I didn't realize how much darkness I'd been carrying." This is what forgiveness does. It doesn't change the past, but it transforms your present. It breaks the chains that bind you to old wounds and ancient grievances. Now, I want to address something that troubles many people. They ask me, what if the person who hurt me isn't sorry? What if they've never apologized, never acknowledged the harm they caused? And I tell them this: your forgiveness isn't dependent on their apology. You're not waiting for their permission to be free. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. It's a declaration of independence from the tyranny of the past. When you forgive, you're not saying what happened was acceptable. You're saying you refuse to let it control your destiny any longer. I knew a woman whose business partner had embezzled money from their company. The betrayal was devastating. Not only did she lose financially, but she lost trust in her own judgment. For years, she carried this bitterness like armor, protecting herself from future hurt by staying hard and suspicious. Her business suffered, not because of the money that was stolen, but because she couldn't attract new partnerships, new opportunities. Her energy was so guarded, so defensive, that prosperity couldn't flow to her. When she finally released the resentment through spiritual work and conscious forgiveness, something remarkable happened. Within 3 months, a new business opportunity presented itself, one far more lucrative than the partnership she'd lost. The person who brought her this opportunity told her, "There's something different about you now. You seem open, trustworthy." She had become magnetic to her good by releasing the old hurt. Here's a powerful truth. The universe cannot give you new good while you're clutching old grievances. Your hands must be open to receive. When you're holding tightly to resentment, your fists are clenched. There's no room for blessings to land. Think of your consciousness as a cup. If it's filled with bitter water, resentment, anger, blame, there's no room for the sweet wine of abundance, joy, and new opportunities. You must empty the cup first. You must pour out the bitter water before the universe can fill it with something better. And that requires a decision, a conscious, deliberate choice to release what no longer serves you. I've watched people cling to their grievances like treasures, polishing them daily, recounting them to anyone who will listen. They wear their wounds like badges of honor. But what they don't realize is that every time they rehearse the story of how they were wronged, they're reinforcing the very vibration that keeps them stuck. They're essentially saying to the universe, "More of this, please. I'm so committed to this narrative that I want to experience it over and over again." And the universe, ever faithful, obliges. Here's what I want you to understand. Holding on to resentment doesn't punish the other person. It punishes you. It's like drinking poison and expecting someone else to get sick. The person you're angry with has moved on with their life. They're sleeping peacefully, eating their meals, going about their business. Meanwhile, you're lying awake at night, replaying conversations from 5 years ago, imagining all the things you should have said. You're the one carrying the weight. You're the one imprisoned. Forgiveness is not weakness. It's not saying what happened was acceptable. It's not inviting someone toxic back into your life. Forgiveness is simply the decision to stop allowing the past to dictate your present. It's cutting the cord that binds you to old pain. It's saying, "What happened, happened. I release it now, so I can be free." I knew a woman who spent 15 years angry at her sister over an inheritance dispute. 15 years, she would tell me. I'll never forgive her for what she did. Never. And during those 15 years, her health deteriorated, her other relationships suffered, and opportunities seemed to pass her by. Her sister, meanwhile, went on to build a successful business and a happy family. Finally, one day, exhausted by her own bitterness, this woman decided to let it go. Not because her sister apologized, she never did, but because she realized the resentment was destroying her own life. Within 6 months of releasing that anger, her health improved, she reconnected with old friends, and she met someone who became a wonderful life partner. The shift was miraculous, but it wasn't magic. It was simply the natural result of clearing space for good to enter. This principle applies to every area of life. I've seen people hold on to jobs they despise, relationships that drain them, possessions that clutter their homes and minds. And underneath it all is fear that if they let go, nothing better will come. But this is backwards thinking. Nature abhors a vacuum. When you empty your cup, life rushes in to fill it. Think of your life as a beautiful home. If every room is packed with broken furniture, outdated belongings, and things you no longer love, where will the new treasures go? You can wish and affirm and visualize all you want, but if there's no space to receive, your good must wait at the door. I once counseled a woman who complained constantly about her lack of prosperity. She wanted money, opportunities, abundance. Yet, when I visited her home, I found it crammed with things, piles of old magazines, clothes she never wore, gifts she'd received but didn't like. She couldn't even walk through some rooms. I told her plainly, "Your outer world reflects your inner world. This clutter is blocking your good." She was resistant at first, offended even. But gradually, she began to release. She donated, discarded, and organized. And as her home cleared, so did her mind. Within weeks, a job opportunity appeared. Then, an unexpected check arrived. The outer clearing had created an inner opening. This is the law. You cannot fool it. You cannot trick the universe into giving you what you're not ready to receive. Readiness isn't just about desire, it's about preparation. It's about making room, literally and figuratively. And here's something most people don't realize. The universe reads your actions more clearly than your words. You can affirm prosperity all day long, but if your closets are crammed with clothes you never wear, if your home is cluttered with broken objects and outdated belongings, you're sending a contradictory message. You're telling the universe, "I'm holding on to lack. I'm not ready for the new." I once knew a woman who desperately wanted a new relationship. She prayed, she visualized, she did everything right, or so she thought. But her bedroom still contained photographs of her ex-husband. His clothes still hung in half her closet. She was living in a museum of the past, all while asking for a future. I said to her gently, "You cannot welcome a new love while you're still housing the old one. The physical space matters. It's not superstition, it's energetic reality." She resisted at first. Those items felt like security, like proof that she had once been loved. But that's exactly the problem. She was clinging to evidence of past love instead of creating space for present love. When she finally cleared out those belongings, donated the clothes, removed the photographs, reclaimed her full closet, something shifted. Within weeks, she met someone new. Not because of magic, but because she had finally made herself available. This principle applies to everything you desire. Want more money? Clean out your wallet. Organize your financial papers. Create systems that honor abundance rather than chaos. Want better health? Clear out the expired medications, the junk food, the clothes that no longer fit. Want new opportunities? Unsubscribe from commitments that drain you. Release projects that no longer serve you. Make space in your calendar for the unexpected. The universe operates on a principle of circulation. Energy must flow. When you dam it up with clutter, with indecision, with half-finished projects and unmade choices, you create stagnation. And stagnation is the opposite of manifestation. I've watched people transform their entire lives simply by cleaning out a drawer. Because that one drawer represented a willingness to release, to make space, to prepare for something better. And that willingness, that energetic shift, is what the universe responds to. You see, preparation isn't passive waiting, it's active faith. It's saying, I believe so completely that my good is coming that I'm getting ready for it now. Think of it like this. When you're expecting an honored guest to arrive at your home, you don't wait until you hear the doorbell to start preparing. You clean your house beforehand. You set the table. You arrange the flowers. You prepare the environment to receive what's coming. That's what we're doing in consciousness. We're preparing the environment mentally, emotionally, and physically to receive our good. And here's the beautiful part. The act of preparation itself transforms you. When you start acting as if your desire is already on its way, you shift from hoping to knowing, from wishing to expecting, from someday to now. This is where faith becomes visible. Because anyone can say they have faith. Anyone can claim they believe. But preparation reveals what you truly believe at the deepest level. When you invest in that course before you know how the money will come, you're demonstrating faith. When you clear space in your closet for new clothes before you can afford them, you're demonstrating faith. When you practice your acceptance speech before you've won the award, you're demonstrating faith. And the universe responds to demonstration. Not to your words, not to your wishes, but to your actions that align with your words. I've watched this principle work in the most unexpected ways. A woman who wanted to be married started setting the table for two, even though she lived alone. She bought a king-sized bed. She made space in her closet. Within months, she met her husband. Not because the table setting was magic, but because these actions reprogrammed her subconscious mind to accept partnership as natural and inevitable. Another person wanted to travel, but felt trapped by circumstances. So they bought a suitcase. Just one beautiful suitcase. They kept it visible in their room. They packed and unpacked it, visualizing their travels. Within the year, unexpected opportunities opened up, and that suitcase saw more countries than they'd dreamed possible. These aren't coincidences. This is law in action. Your word is your wand because it contains your consciousness. When you speak carelessly, you're creating carelessly. When you speak with conviction and faith, you're creating with power. I've watched people turn their entire lives around simply by changing what they say. A woman once told me she was always saying, I'm so tired of struggling. Every conversation, every journal entry, I'm tired of struggling. And so the struggle continued, faithful as a shadow. When she finally heard herself, really heard the pattern, she was shocked. She began to say instead, I am guided to my good effortlessly. Not as a lie, not as wishful thinking, but as a recognition of spiritual truth. The exhaustion lifted first, not from circumstances changing, but from her consciousness shifting. Then the circumstances followed. This is why I tell you to guard your words, as a gardener guards their soil. You wouldn't plant weeds and expect roses. Yet people speak defeat, limitation, and fear, then wonder why those very things bloom in their experience. The universe doesn't argue with you. It doesn't say, are you sure about that? It simply says, yes, as you have spoken, so shall it be. It's the most faithful mirror you'll ever encounter. When you catch yourself about to speak negatively, pause. That pause is sacred. In that space, you can choose differently. You can say, actually, I know something wonderful is unfolding, or I'm being led to the perfect solution, or simply, all is well. And here's what makes this even more powerful. Your subconscious mind is always listening. It hears every word you speak aloud and every word you think silently. It's taking notes, building your tomorrow based on today's vocabulary. If you constantly say, I can't afford it, your subconscious accepts that as an order and works to make it true. If you say instead, I am open to receiving abundance in unexpected ways, your subconscious goes to work on that instruction. This isn't about positive thinking as a band-aid over reality. This is about aligning your words with truth, the truth that you are a spiritual being with creative power, that the universe is for you, not against you, and that your good already exists, waiting for your recognition. Your words are not commentary. They are causative. Let me share with me something that happened to a woman who attended one of my classes years ago. She was a writer, but she hadn't been able to sell anything in months. Every morning, she would sit at her desk and say aloud, nobody wants what I write. The market is terrible. I'll never break through. And her reality reflected that perfectly. Rejection after rejection. One day, I asked her a simple question. If you were already a successful writer, what would you say every morning? She thought about it, then smiled. I'd probably say something like, my work finds the perfect audience. Editors love what I create. I am always in demand. I said. Then say that instead. Not someday. Today. She hesitated. But it's not true yet. I told her what I'm telling you now. Your words don't report the news, they write it. Within 3 weeks, she received an offer from a publisher she'd never even submitted to. They had read an old piece of hers that had been shared, and they wanted more. She came back to class with tears in her eyes. I didn't change my writing, she said. I changed my words about my writing. This is the power you hold. When you shift from complaint to claim, from fear speak to faith speak, you are not pretending. You are participating in the creative process. You are directing your subconscious mind, which is the builder of your experience, toward the pattern you truly desire. And here's what happens next. Synchronicities start appearing. Doors open, people show up. Opportunities that were impossible become inevitable, because you stopped arguing for your limitations and started speaking your liberty. The universe doesn't ask you to believe it first. It asks you to speak it first. Faith is not a feeling. It is a statement. And every statement you make is either building your dream or dismantling it. So I ask you now, what are you building with your words today? I have watched people build empires with nothing but the consistent declaration of their divine right to prosperity. I have seen others dismantle kingdoms they already possessed, stone by stone, with their pessimistic utterances. The power is neutral. It works for you or against you, according to your direction. Now, let me speak to you about the principle of non-resistance, for this is where many of you are losing the game before you even begin. You fight what you don't want, and in fighting it, you feed it. You resist your circumstances, and your resistance makes them permanent. I tell you this truth. What you resist persists. What you fight, you invite to stay. The person who says, I hate being poor, I will fight poverty with everything I have, is tying themselves to poverty with chains of steel. For in that statement, they have made poverty their sparring partner, their constant companion, their focus. They wake up thinking about poverty. They go to sleep wrestling with poverty. And the law, being impersonal, says, you wish to engage with poverty? Here is more poverty to engage with. But the person who says, I give thanks for my increasing prosperity, and turns their entire attention toward abundance, this person has withdrawn all energy from lack. They have stopped feeding the beast. And the beast, starving for attention, dissolves into the nothingness from which it came. This is the divine paradox. The way out is not through. The way to overcome is not to fight. The way to victory is to withdraw your attention from defeat and place it entirely upon the victory you claim. You do not fight darkness. You turn on the light. And when the light appears, where did the darkness go? It went nowhere. It simply never was. It was only the absence of light. So when you face a challenge, stop declaring war upon it. Stop saying, I must overcome this obstacle. Instead, deny it the dignity of your opposition. Turn your face toward the already accomplished good. Say, there are no obstacles in divine mind, and divine mind is my mind. The way is clear, the path is straight, and my good rushes to meet me now. This is not passivity. This is the highest form of action, the action of alignment. This is the action of knowing that the universe is not your opponent, but your ally. Every force in creation is moving in your favor once you stop resisting the flow. I have watched people transform their entire financial situation not by working harder, but by stopping the mental warfare. A woman once told me she was in debt and anxious every waking moment. I told her, "You are treating money as an enemy. Begin to bless it. Thank it when it comes, release it with joy when it goes, and expect its return." She thought I was speaking nonsense. But she did it. Within weeks, unexpected checks arrived. An old debt was forgiven. A new opportunity opened. The money was always trying to reach her. She had simply been standing in her own way. This is the secret most never grasp. Your good is not delayed by external circumstances. It is delayed by internal resistance. The moment you stop fighting, stop forcing, stop demanding to know how and when the universe can deliver. And here is where faith becomes wildly practical. You do not need to see the entire staircase. You need only to take the next step. That is all. One step in faith, one small action aligned with your vision. The rest unfolds as you move. I think of a man who dreamed of starting a business but had no capital, no connections, no clear path. He was paralyzed by the enormity of it. I said, "What is one thing you can do today?" He said, "I suppose I could write down my idea." I told him, "Then, that is your step. Take it." He did. That one step led to another. He shared the idea with a friend. The friend introduced him to an investor. Within a year, the business was thriving. But it all began with the willingness to take one faithful step without seeing the whole journey. This is how faith works in the real world. Not in giant leaps that require you to quit your job and leap off a cliff, but in small, steady steps that accumulate into transformation. And you must be willing to be surprised by the form your good takes.